Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Kitchen time's a bit unusual at the moment. This is an experiment based on a couple of things I said in the Sunday chat, where I said occasionally you'll have heard me said I have a plan. Well, this is sort of part of the plan in one respect, and that leaf is really annoying me. It's got to come off. Yellow. Serving no purpose, basically. It's just annoying me. And then, much to everybody else's annoyance, all these spikes are coming off. This is my Dracula Bella, and although I may well be able to thread that particular spike back up through the basket, effectively I want this plant to start again. So all the spikes are coming off. The rate at which it's been producing these spikes, I'll be quite happy to wait for some more to be produced. So now there's nothing to hold it in its basket, basically. I'm just going to get this hanger off. It'll have to go back on again, but I want it out the way for now. I will more than likely put this straight back in this basket. I will be thinking about that as I'm progressing. So Dracula Bella, complete with quite a few fern seedlings which are coming out as I go along. Now something has gone wrong with this, and I don't know what, but whatever it is going to be in this pot. Whatever's gone wrong is in here, and hopefully it'll be obvious. Now first of all, there is a hell of a smell of faustiness, but then this is damp moss, isn't it? At the end of the day, this is damp moss. Now that could be a spike, but it could also be a new root. What I'm looking for is signs of root growth here, rather than just the old roots, many of which will be dead like these. These have gone. But then I don't know whether that's a new root or a spike. That's the problem. I haven't had Draculas the amount of time I would need to be able to know these differences, shall we say. Now, although this was potted by me, it was potted a while ago, and it has been kept incredibly moist. So this moss is probably either gone off or going off. As I said, I've got no idea whether these are spikes or roots. Bearing in mind the spikes point downwards and come out the bottom of the basket. You see what I mean? It's difficult to, well, which is which then? But basically anything that looks whitish and hasn't got a hairy bit on the end is going to be classed as a root for now. If it turns out to be a spike, great, but I doubt if it will. I'm going to try and get as many of these seedling ferns out as I can, because if they get established, their root systems can be quite, I won't say damaging, but they take an awful lot of nutrients out of the pot. And bearing in mind it's a Dracula, so I wouldn't be putting many nutrients in there in the first place. It wouldn't leave a lot, would it? Right, how are we doing here? This is just, it's falling out. I'm not having to pull it to any great extent. Oh, now that's a root, I hope. Well, it's white and it's growing. So at the moment, what's going wrong? My theory, and this is nothing more than a theory, is geared up to moss is fundamentally acidic. Yeah? And many people grow Draculas and Masdevallias in moss. Yeah, well, what brand? And out of those brands, which batch? How long has it been stored before it was bought? There are variables there, even with the same brand. You see what I'm getting at? What I'm getting at is, have I got an old batch that's already used up some of its life before I got it? Strictly speaking, it shouldn't do, because it would have been dry, in which case it shouldn't really age, should it? But I don't know that for a fact. But I'm not going to do too much more, because I want to get under the tap and do a rinse. But what I do have to do is get rid of all these hairy bits. They serve no purpose, they're dead roots. But I need to go very careful that there's no white ones poking down in amongst them, like that one there. So we'll avoid that one. I just want to tidy this. And I mean, these are definitely dead roots. See, now these could be roots that failed after it was repotted. In other words, they weren't bad roots when it went in there and then failed. That's highly likely, in fact, with the, you know, the normal things that happen after root disturbance. Now this side of the plant looks a little bit more healthy. You can see through it now, so there's not too much more moss left. I'm going to leave it at that for picking about, and I'm going to get under the tap now and give this a rinse off. I'll do that, and then I'll come back about talk about what the plan is. For goodness sake, don't all go out and copy me. This could be a miserable failure. And it's going to take a while before I even know if it works. And then if it works, I can apply it to other things. But in the meantime, it's patience is required. The one good thing about this experiment is the fact that it's winter makes no flipping difference. This is a cool grower. So it's not going to be suffering because of the low temperatures, is it? In fact, it's probably enjoying them. So, okay, I'll have a wash under the tap, and then we'll come back. This has grown a lot of new growths this year. We've got some spotting, which I'd prefer not to have, I must admit. A couple of leaf tips that are not happy. So it's not a bursting with health plant, full of health. But then if it hasn't got a good root system, it wouldn't be, would it? You know, it would suffer in places. But I'll have a clean up, and then I'll be back and we will go over my theory and what I plan to do about it. It may or may not work. Okay, the plan. Problem with the moss, acidity. Yeah? And if you've got heat and warm temperatures, as a person, I'm obviously going to want to keep my Draculas and Masdevallias moist, so they got watered an awful lot. That's going to age that moss faster than it would do in cooler temperatures. So my theory is that the moss is quite acidic. Now in a cloud forest that's probably nowhere near as true because of the rains and the mist and everything. There's a constant replenishment of fresh water going through the moss and over the branches and over the roots of our Masdevallias and Draculas. And as a consequence, I don't think their roots would be sat in anything even slightly acidic. I don't know that for a fact, but this is my theory, because of the constant washing motion that's going on in a cloud forest. They're dripping wet basically. Well, that water's coming from somewhere. It's mist and fog and rain, which is fresh water fundamentally. So that's what I think is wrong. Plus in this particular case, that wasn't your zombie moss. Well, some of it was, but some of it was also my collected sphagnum moss, which is an English variety that lives in areas like peat bogs, which are incredibly acidic, and it could even be more acidic than normal as a consequence of using that mixed in. So my theory is that we're going to go for a media that holds water and retains water very, very well, still has a bit of air and some room for roots to move, and more importantly, bloom spikes to actually make their way down and out of the pot downwards, which is what this one's going to do. But it isn't acidic. It's near a neutral. I'm sure as it breaks down there will be some acidity involved, but hopefully I won't let it get that far. And because it holds moisture as well, if not better than moss, maybe this is going to do the job. So the plan is to get some big stuff in the bottom of the pot so that all the little stuff don't fall out the bottom, It's probably going to fall out the sides, but I'm just getting some of the larger pieces down in the bottom of the pot. And then the idea is to get the small stuff, this stuff that I've cut up with the scissors, which has also got quite a lot of the fibre in it rather than just the pieces, and I'm going to put that on the bottom of the plant and hold it there, or at least get it to stay there like that. So that's directly under the plant now, and I've got it. So what we'll do now is we'll put some fluffy stuff and get to the small stuff in the pot, and then we are going to turn the pot sideways, and hopefully that stuff will stay there. It's going to have to go that way, isn't it, because of how I've decided to hold this. And then this is going to get pushed in the pot so that it stays there and doesn't all fall off like that. Now we can deal with what's sticking out the sides and get those to twist round and get down in the pot, along with some more of this stuff. So that's my plan basically, is to get something that retains moisture, has some air in it, and dumps the acidity at the back door. You can stay there, mate. It may not work, because it may turn out that this stuff is acidic as well, but I don't believe it is. And on top of that, this stuff is supposed to last reasonably well. Not incredibly well, but reasonably well. So, I'm going to get these roots down the inside of the pot. Now, some of these might be roots, some could be plant spikes. All I'm interested at the moment is getting them tucked in so that they're moist and they've got something to grow into, should they choose to grow, of course. They may not. They may decide, we actually liked our moss and we don't like this stuff, we're going to die. And then we've got no roots at all. Well, there aren't many roots here to start with. So we will see what this results in. And I've got no idea what's going to happen now. No idea at all. So we've got the base of the plant roughly at the right height. It's not sticking up too much. I always think Masdevallias and Draculas are better not buried. They're better just sitting on the top. It's how most orchids grow, quite honestly. Then I'm just going to tuck some of the larger pieces down the side near the top, just to help hold it in place, and just push those last few roots down into something. Right, so that's it. That was the plan, is the plan. Now all we've got to do is wait and see. But that plant had been in that pot plenty long enough for some roots to have made it to the edge of the pot, and none of them had. And when we took it out the moss, you could see that that was not an active root system, not by any means. So let's see if we can get one to grow. So we've got a more neutral growing medium now, far more neutral than before, and let's see if it would prefer that environment. This is exactly the same logic as I've done for the Miltoniopsis. They must stay moist, they must have some air in around them, but not necessarily as much as some other plants, and they hate breaking down media. Now when we say these orchids don't like breaking down media, we're telling porkies really, because it is sort of factual that they don't like it, but for the wrong real reason. The real reason they don't like the breaking down media is the acidity. Yeah, all these organic medias become more and more acidic the more they get closer to rotten. You know, you're going to go through starting to break down, breaking down quite well, breaking down very, very well, rotten. That's the ultimate goal of breaking down, and you know, the bacteria and everything that get to work is to end up with a rotten material which is very acidic. Our idea is to try and get the plants out of it before it gets to that stage. So that's my theory. I get our little hanger back on so that it can hang up. I mean, temporarily it could sit like that, but you know, I'm going to say eventually it's going to grow another spike, isn't it? Maybe wishful thinking. But it's certainly done its best to produce blooms by producing lots of spikes. And the main reason I suspect it hasn't bloomed is a lack of roots to support those spikes. You know, it's a strange concept, but you have to imagine a plant, the overall plant, the whole thing is a unit. Now when it's a seedling, it's only just got enough energy to produce a new growth now and again. And then as it produces a new growth that's a bit bigger, with perhaps a bigger leaf, it can produce a bit more energy through the photosynthesis and some of those new roots. So it can have a go at producing another new growth, which hopefully will be a bit bigger. And this process keeps going, and every now and again the plant, I know plants don't think, but the plant will actually assess whether it has excess resources. And if it hasn't, then it will use all of its resources to do another growth and some more roots, all the time getting bigger, holding more energy, more storage, until eventually it gets to the point where it does an assessment and it thinks, I've got some excess energy. What are we going to do? What are we going to do now? Shall we try 2 growths and double our rate of increase? Or shall we have a go at blooming? And not until that excess energy is within the plant will it have a go at blooming. Yeah? So you need your plant fit as a butcher's dog, basically, if you want to get a good blooming and those spikes and blooms to reach maturity and actually produce flowers on the end of them. So I'm just going to tidy up these tatty ends on these leaves. I usually do the pointy thing, cut it over, I presume you can see that, cut it at an angle like that right through, and then go back to the middle and cut it the other way and make a pointy bit. And it looks quite like a real leaf then. Doesn't fool the judges apparently. But yeah, just take it off at an angle, and that gives you a, you know, an obviously sawn off leaf, but when you do that to it, it looks a little bit more normal, and it can hide in away amongst the other leaves and try and disguise itself. Should I take that really badly spotted one off? No, I'll just take that tatty end off. And I think that'll do for the trimming. Now I don't use the cinnamon on the ends of leaves like that. As far as I'm concerned, I've never had a problem. You know, that's just a tidying function. There's another bad one there, but it's upside down, so it was not so easy to see. There we go. So that's a bit tidier. We've got our hanger back on. Got a very wet media at the moment. Literally this has come out of the bucket that I'm still soaking it in because I haven't got the final lot of water out yet. And there was a reason for not trying to dry it off yet, because I thought some of the use I've got for this coconut husk, well, why not get on and do it now, and that will save having to dry that stuff. It seems a bit silly, doesn't it, spending ages drying it out only to get it soaking wet again. Anyway, that's Dracula Bella. I suppose I better do a label for it. Somebody will moan if I don't. They usually do. And I am getting much better at doing it. So that was part of my plan and part of my theory. Let's try and remove some acidity for an amount of time as yet unknown. Because once this starts to break down, it'll do exactly the same thing. It'll start to go more acidic. And it'll hold more water when it starts getting like that as well. So, you know, down in there I've just seen an absolute, I don't know whether I can show you, there on the end, look at that mass of new roots. You may not be able to see them, I'm trying to angle this, but there's an absolute mass of new roots growing. Now come on, get down in that media. Stop mucking about here. Hopefully that'll work. Right, so that was that then. Joke, not forgotten. What should we do now? We'll get a bit nearer the mark with this one, whatever the mark is. It'll be dependent on your views. Anyway, guy was walking along, little country village, you know, nice little quaint pub, nice little quaint church, all that sort of stuff. Tiny little village, everybody knows each other and all that sort of stuff. And guy's walking back home from his half a pint and a sandwich up the pub, and he meets the vicar walking the other way. Now the vicar is always on his bike. If he's not actually in the church doing stuff, he's on his bike. And he looks at him and he says, "What are you doing walking, vicar?" And he said, "Some toe rag's stolen my bike." Oh my goodness, who could that be in a place like this? I mean, they can't use it, can they? We'll see it, we'll know. Oh, this is just silly. I tell you what, when you come to do the sermon on Sunday, yeah, go through the 10 Commandments, and when you get to "thou shalt not steal, stop, and you and me will scan all the faces in the church, because somebody is going to look guilty." Yeah? So brilliant. Anyway, couldn't actually go to the church on Sunday, so missed the sermon. So later in the week, bumps into the vicar, and he's on his bike. And he said, "Oh, doing the 10 Commandments then, it worked, did it?" He said, "Well, yes and no, because basically I was going through the 10 Commandments, and I got to 'thou shalt not commit adultery,' and I remembered where I'd left my bike." See you next time.